Jake Charen. I'm a risk architect here at Lakeside Insurance, and joining me today is Audrey Sevalt of BBSI. Audrey is an HR pro. She is awesome. She helps our team out here at Lakeside to help our partner clients understand the changing landscape here in Colorado with all the different employment issues that we're seeing. Really appreciate everybody that joined on, especially those that were also on our call back earlier in the springtime, where we touched on some different employment issues and HR problems going on here. And really today is for everyone. There's a lot of information that we're going to throw at you. Please feel free to use the Q&A chat box feature throughout the call. I'll be answering and stopping throughout the call to make sure that we address all the questions that you might have. This is a lot of information, and we will be sending out a recording of the webinar afterwards. I'll be sharing my information and Audrey's information so that you can reach out accordingly with any questions that you might have, how this can affect you, your business, or maybe any potential friends that you might have that are business owners as well. So I'm going to let Audrey take it away. But again, please, I'm urging you to ask questions throughout. It will be helpful for everyone. If you're thinking of something, chances are somebody else is thinking the same thing. So let's raise our hand today and ask some questions, and I'll let Audrey take it from here.
Thanks, Jake. Yes, my name is Audrey Sevalt. I work at BBSI, which is a PEO in Colorado that provides consultant services that include workers' compensation, HR consulting, safety consulting, and business consulting for small businesses. And I currently support many small businesses here in Colorado and have done that for almost 12 years. So I understand how small businesses think and what their needs are. I've also been an HR practitioner for 39 years in a variety of corporate executive roles. My greatest joy is working with small businesses because they really care about people and making sure that their business are successful through those employees. So nothing but a joyous experience. Additionally, I'm also a professor at University of Denver, teacher strategic HR program. And so I have students teaching me the new trends that are coming our way, so we can think about the future with them. And one of the things I feel really strongly about is really educating the business community on the laws, particularly in Colorado, because they are becoming more and more complex to deal with. And if an agency hears from a business that they just didn't know what they didn't know, the agency will say that's not a good excuse, we're going to fine you anyway. So, the education piece is critical nowadays to the success of businesses. And I am not an attorney, but I have spent a lot of time working with agencies to better understand what they're enforcing. And I did that with FAMLI. So just to give you a sense of how I prepared to understand this law, because it's relatively new, I spent over a week researching everything I could find about FAMLI, not only with the law itself, but also with their website. That's the best source of information. And I spoke to the agency at length about a lot of things that are going on that are behind the scenes. So I'm going to, like Jake said, there's a lot of information packed in this presentation. I hope that you take the time to learn more about it. And there's an option that Jake's going to present that might replace FAMLI for you if you find that to be a more appealing option for you and your employees. So we'll talk about that later, but let's get into the detail about FAMLI. As you may recall, historically, way back in November of 2020, we all voted, and the Proposition 118 was passed that said now we're going to have a paid family and medical leave law here in Colorado. There are other states that have the same law. California is one of the most famous ones. It's been around for a while. So it's very similar in design to California's law. So that passed, and I was shocked when that happened. And then on July 2nd of last year, they started a public education campaign, started up the agency's website, really started talking about that this thing is coming. And then, of course, this year, on January 1st, you all probably are aware of taxes started to be collected for all employees in Colorado are now paying a 0.45% tax. And then employers with 10 or more employees are paying that same 0.45% tax. The first payment that was due to the agency was in April of this year. And so every quarter now, all employers with 10 or more employees should be paying those taxes, and the agency is collecting funds as we speak. The next big milestone is going to be January 1st of 2024, when the family benefits are accessible to all employees, not employees with big companies. It's everybody is going to be eligible for family benefits. And that is the one thing you got to get ready for, because it could have some potential disruption to the operation, as well as not fully understanding how to talk to employees about family. Because I would guarantee you, one of you in this webinar are going to have an employee come to you and say, I'm going to take family. And you got to know what to say, because the law, much like many other laws, has a retaliation piece that we'll talk about, where you have to be careful. In addition to that, your supervisors have to be careful with what they say if someone comes to you and says, I'm going to take family. So let's talk about the benefits and eligibility. And this is something that you probably have seen on your legal posters, and you might have seen this paycheck stuffer, where we're letting people know, this is a poster that you use, but the way it works is employees are paying this 0.45%. Many employers with 10 plus employees are paying 0.45% for a total of 0.9%. And the cap for family tax for employees is $160,000. All right. Now, the next question, of course, the obvious question is, will the tax increase? Well, it depends, but I would say probably. As of January 1st, 2025, the director of the fund is going to set the new premium amount based on a percentage of employee wages and at a rate to fund 135% of the benefits paid during the prior calendar year, which means that if a lot of people take advantage of family next year, then our taxes are going to go up. So just get ready for, this kind of calculation. I've heard people say it's going to default. It's not going to, no, actually they have some checks and balances in place where they'll increase the tax if there's high utilization. So what events can employees access family leave? And if you've had 50 or more employees, you might have then had exposure to FMLA or family medical leave. Some of this is similar and some of it is unique to Colorado. So let's start with the obvious stuff. It's to care for a child who's been born, adopted, or a foster child. Then it's also to care for a family member with a serious health condition. It might be your own serious health condition. And the last thing is actually to make arrangements for someone. This is particular to Colorado, not FMLA specific, but making arrangements for a family member's deployment, military deployment. There is a clause in FMLA that talks about this scenario. State of Colorado adds, and here's a new one, having safe housing for someone who's dealing with partner violence. They have the right to take FAMLI for this kind of thing, okay? So knowing that these employees can access it for these reasons, who's eligible? Well, anyone in your company who has earned $2,500 is eligible for family, all right? So it's relatively new people. What about seasonal workers? They're eligible too, but they have to work 20 or more weeks in the calendar year. They call that a work week. A work week is not necessarily 40 hours a week. It could be one day. So it's pretty loosely defined, but that means net your seasonal workers could be eligible for FAMLI as well. What about 1099 workers? Well, they can also participate in family. They have to opt in on their own, and they pay the premiums on their own, but it's now a new thing that they can actually take paid family leave if they need it. What about if you have remote workers in Colorado? Maybe it's a company that has many employees in several states. Well, the Colorado employees are eligible. Not all their employees, but only Colorado employees are eligible for family benefits. All right, and my last big reminder, and I'm going to say this again and again, all employees are eligible for family, regardless of company size, which could, to me, is scary, because that could mean if you have a 2-employee operation and one goes on family, what disruption that will create. So what you got to be ready for is a plan. But before we go there, I'm going to talk about how much leave employees get. It's not easy. It's very similar to unemployment, the unemployment division, but there is a benefits and premium calculator that tells people how much pay they can expect. It's on the website. And the way it's calculated, if you really want to know, and this almost is like a trivia quiz, but if you really want to know, the state says the benefits are calculated based on the employee's average weekly wage and related to Colorado's average weekly wage, which amounts to $1,400.21, which is about $73,000 a year. And anyone who makes less than $710 a week could be eligible for 90% of their wages, 90%. So if you have people that are making minimum wage, you can bet that if they need FAMLI, they're going to use it. And then, of course, anyone who makes more than that will only get 50%. This is where short-term disability discussions come into play, but we'll talk about that later. The maximum amount per week that an employee can make with family is $1,100. And these are all estimates. So what I say to employees is go to the calculator to determine what should happen. All right. So those are the amount that benefits employees will receive through the agency. So the other thing you need to know is you're not paying that. The agency is, much like unemployment. So you may hear some of it. They'll inform you of what's going on. I don't know how yet. They haven't really thought this through yet, but there will be some notification to you about when employees are paid. So what isn't counted as wages for family? Any kind of expense reimbursements, life insurance, any employer contributions to 401k or IRS 408 simplified retirement plans, any kinds of employer payments to dependent care, any employee contributions to a medical savings account, any employer contributions to a simplified pension plan, and anything that employers pay for in qualified medical plans or premiums, benefit premiums. So it's not counted. And they have a whole list of things. They have a whole chart, and there's a handbook in there that tells you more about that if you want to hear more. So the next question is, if I'm an employee, how do I access family leave? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to submit their application with supporting documents to the family division, much like they file for unemployment. What the state doesn't fully understand yet is how they're going to notify you and whether you need to get medical certification or not from the employee as well. That's something they're going to tell us more about in September. Applications, the employees need to submit the applications in advance to the agency. And when the leave is foreseeable, they should do it within 30 days, at least 30 days. All right. If it's not foreseeable, they have up to 30 days to file for family leave. And of course, when they file it, the family division will be prompt in paying them, usually within 2 weeks of receiving the application. So employees will not wait very long to get their benefits. All right. And these individuals will be paid every 2 weeks for the duration of the leave. And of course, if they are denied leave, they may appeal, much like with unemployment. So, this is all within the agency, but you may hear a little bit from the agency as well if they ask you questions. And just so you know, employees can apply for benefits in the fourth quarter of this year. Let's say I have a client whose wife is pregnant. She's going to have her baby in January. She plans to apply for family so that she can have the 12 weeks of paid family leave when the baby's born. She doesn't have to wait till January 1st to do that. So you may find that some of your employees are going to start applying in the fourth quarter. So Jake, do we have any questions yet?
No, we haven't had any questions yet. And I know Audrey's been putting out a good amount of information. So again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to use that Q&A, use the chat box, and we'll stop the presentation and answer those. So I'll let you kind of keep going along, Audrey. But as everyone can tell, it's a lot of information that's kind of changing. So it's very important to understand what's the plan in place, how are we going to be proactive and not be reactive in any of these situations.
Right. This is we're not even halfway through. So let's keep going.
We've got a lot left.
I know. So how do you as the employer make sure you've got a process, a solid process when you get ready for family leave? Now, let's talk a little bit about how FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, and HFWA, Healthy Family Workplaces Act, paid sick leave work with family. Well, the way the state sees it is FMLA, the way FMLA works is that employers must keep the job open for up to 12 weeks, and they must protect benefits for up to 12 weeks. So if I'm out on FMLA, I will call you when I get back. You've got to bring me back to my same or similar job and pay and benefits, all right? You also are obligated to keep my benefits going while I'm gone, and we can make arrangements, private arrangements for me to pay premiums, all right? And you have a special FMLA form where the employee fills this out, takes it to their provider. The doctor fills out, yes, that person needs to go to FMLA, and it's very similar to FAMLI. So they have to do that with FMLA. It's very similar to FAMLI. With the paid sick leave, HFWA, the state says employees should not use that for family events. It's intended for minor illnesses. It's not intended for major illnesses. And family is intended for life-changing events like having a baby, those kinds, taking care for a loved one who's very ill, those kinds of things. So they discourage employees from using it. Forbidden? Well, you can't make employees not use it, but they discourage employees from using it for that reason.
Yeah.
So what about, go ahead, Jake.
Yep, it looks like we have a question that came in, and I'll list the question off, and I'm going to let you respond to it. So it was asked that someone has an employee that works from Virginia. Should we be paying into the Family Act?
No. No.
And the reason is because family is for Colorado only.
Colorado employees. Now it gets messier, and this is where you got to get help from your accountant. But if you have 10 or more employees, you may owe the 0.45% of the tax for that employee in Colorado. So you should talk to your bookkeeper about that. There's a lot more information on the website about it too. It's so confusing. All right, let's talk about paid time off. What if you offer a paid time off benefit or vacation? How does that work with family? Well, you can't require employees to use accrued PTO or vacation while on family. You can't do that. You can't say you can't put in a policy. You got to be really careful with that. However, you can allow employees to use their PTO and encourage them to use it because it may help offset, if they're making 50% of their pay while on family, they can certainly top it off with an additional 50% of pay while they're out to make it full pay. They can certainly do that, all right? Or if they have benefit premiums, if I have to pay a premium every pay period, I would love to use my PTO versus waiting till I get back and I owe a big bill. So you can offer those options to them, and many times employees like that idea. They can also, if they want to use their time, you've got to make sure you document this clearly in writing. And I have a form for you. You can see it. The state may provide a similar form in 2023, but for now, you just need to have some formal notification process of I want to take FAMLI. This is when I want to take it. If I want to use PTO or vacation, this is how much I want to use. Now, the other thing you have to remember is you can't let employees exceed their current rate of pay by topping off PTO and vacation. In other words, they can't make more money while on family leave. And if that happens where they do get overpaid based on family, you can tell them they need to recoup those overpayments through a payroll deduction process when they return to work. I do want to tell you, go ahead, Jake, you want to say something?
No, I think that's a good point. I'll let you take your next point, and then we've got a good question that came in too.
Okay, so you want to be careful with this kind of thing because you can't set an employee in a verbal agreement, I'm going to let you repay me back the $500 of benefit. You have to put it in writing. All right, now here's the other thing. The agency, when I ask them a lot of questions about how all this works as families being paid out, they don't have anybody hired yet to do this. And they told me that I need to call them in September to get a lot of these operational questions answered. So you can bet that we'll be on the phone asking a lot of questions. Go ahead, You have a question, Jake.
No, and I think that's important to know, obviously, too, that things are changing with this Family Act, and we're going to be keeping everyone in the loop, and we'll probably host or at least publish some type of an article or some sort of webinar later on towards the end of the year. And Audrey's going to touch on the October 31st date, but I won't get ahead of myself here. So one question that we have is, if you have employees that work in multiple states whose wages are being reported in Colorado for tax purposes only, do they qualify for this program?
No, only Colorado employees.
As long as they're domiciled in the state.
They reside in Colorado. That's right. That's right. All right.
Okay.
So
and we've got one more that just came in. If you want to take this one down too.
Awesome.
Do the employees still have to accrue PTO/HFWA while on leave? I'll let you answer that one, and then we'll go into the next one.
No. Now, your systems may not allow you to do that if they're using PTO or vacation while on family, and that's something you got to check with your payroll department on. But no, you do not have to have PTO or vacation accruing while they're on leave.
And then how do benefit deductions work while they are on leave and they're not getting a paycheck?
Well, that's a great question. And so the way it should work is you either have them pay their benefit. If they have a deduction that they pay every pay period, then you have them use PTO or vacation to cover that cost, or they write you a personal check while they're gone. They come, they mail you a check. Or when they get back, they pay it back to you either in full or in installments, which is risky, by the way. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
All right, and we've got one more, and then I'll let you get back into the slides.
Okay.
So it says that, and this is, I'm going to assume that this company is domiciled in Colorado. They said, I have many employees in Texas. Did I hear correctly that I might owe the 0.45% to the Colorado family in Colorado for the wages that these employees are earning, even though wages are reported in Texas?
I don't think so, but the state is intentionally vague about that. So my advice to you would be to ask your bookkeeper or your accountant about that. If you look at the website, it sounds very bizarre. The language that they're using is, if you have multiple employees in multiple states, you may pay the 0.45% if you have 10 or more employees. But that, I don't trust that. So I would say talk to your licensed professionals that can tell you the real answer to that, because it's not clear in my mind when I look at the website as to exactly what that means. And the state didn't have a cohesive answer for me when I called them about it as well. So
okay.
Unfortunately, we don't have a good answer.
And do you think that we'll have better answers come September, or will this be more October, November?
Oh, I think we're going to know more come October, November timeframe, and then we're going to learn more in the first quarter of 2024, because they don't have people doing this stuff, so they're going to learn, and they have very limited skills. So when I call them and ask them very particular technical questions, they're reading off a script, which means they don't have a lot of knowledge about the law themselves. So it's a little scary to see how this is working out, but it's a brand new agency, much like the Colorado Secure Savings. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to keep probing, and I encourage you to do the same. So the FAMLI agency has provided a number of webinars over the last few months, and most of those webinars are centered around collecting taxes. But, I was hoping to have something that would say, here's how FAMLI works. Nope, didn't have that. What they have is Q&A. So I'm going to highlight some Q&As that they laid out that will reiterate some of the questions you've been asking, because I think repetition will help you remember all this stuff. But let's walk through a few questions, all right? So can FAMLI be used intermittently? So intermittently would mean that I use a little bit this week, and I use a little bit next week, and I use a little bit the week after. Maybe I have chemotherapy. Maybe I'm taking care of a loved one part-time. But that means can I use those 12 weeks over a year for FAMLI? And the answer is absolutely you can. It's very similar to FMLA, that you can use intermittently. What that means to employers is that you have to track this time when they're taking. You can't just say, yep, that's fine. You want to track it down to the hour of how much time they're using. And this is new for businesses that haven't used FMLA. FMLA's had this around for a while. The next question is, who pays the individuals while they're on FAMLI? Well, I've mentioned this before, but the FAMLI agency or family agency pays employees directly. You do not pay them, right? Can seasonal workers access? You've heard this before as well. The answer is absolutely. If they make more than $2,500 and they work 20 or more work weeks, they are eligible for family leave. How do I know when an employee applies? That's a great question. I don't have a really clear answer that I'm comfortable with, but this is what the agency's official line is that they will notify you when an employee applies for family. But I would say I would have a second approach to this, because I don't totally trust how that's going to work, because it could be through snail mail, which who knows when that's going to get there. But I would encourage you to talk to employees themselves and encourage them to talk to you too. How much leave are individuals entitled to under FAMLI? They can have paid benefits for up to 12 weeks, and then for pregnancy with complications is up to 16 weeks. All right, so that's Q&A. Any more questions there, Jake? I got more.
No, but I think that a question that I have that I'm sure a lot of people in the group are wondering, are you getting questions while you're working with companies heading into now Q4 coming soon for rewriting employee handbooks for 2024? And are you including information about family, how it should be reported, how the employees should be kind of utilizing this? And I guess what's kind of been the feedback that you've received?
Well, so working with my clients, yes, in the fourth quarter, we are adding a family policy in the handbooks because it will explain to employees what to do. You can't say, hey, you have family benefit call us if you need us, because you really need a process for them to notify you so you can plan for it. So yes, we are in the fourth quarter updating all employee handbooks to make sure that they have a family policy in there. The agency has what's called a family handbook, and in there is policy language on what to say. So it's really important to put that policy in there. In addition to that, right now, if you have a current legal poster, there is a family explanation there. Next year, there's going to be a new post that emphasizes the benefits. So that also needs to be posted in your employee lounges or your bulletin boards as well.
Okay, so I have two really good questions.
Okay.
I'll give you the first one that's a little quicker. So is the 12 weeks per year, is it per a calendar year? So January 1, 23 to January 1, 24, or is it a 12-month rolling calendar?
I can't confirm this completely, but I believe it's similar to FMLA, where it's based on the event, 1 year from the event. So it's not calendar year.
Okay, and again, that's more come September, we'll be writing something together that lays all this out, and we'll share this with everyone. And that's join the webinar. We'll be posting it on both of our LinkedIn's, websites, and everything like that. So that's a great question. Another really good question. So you mentioned tracking time taken. Leave is 12 weeks per year. Is that based on a 40-hour work week for a total of 480 hours a week, or excuse me, for a total of 480 hours?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that question yet. The reason is that the agency isn't clear themselves about how they're going to handle part-time workers. So the question would be, if I had known my average hours are like 25 hours a week, how does that work? Honestly, I have no idea how they're going to dictate that. So that is an answer to come. Don't have an answer to that question at this point in time. And I would wait. Honestly, I think we all have to wait until September when they have people on board that can explain the benefit side of FAMLI, because there isn't really anybody there that knows how to explain it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I have more questions. All right. So how many times can an individual access leave? Once per calendar year. If they exhaust, so they only can do it once. They can't have, I'm going to go on FAMLI. Oh, I got to go on FAMLI again. Oh, I got to go on. No, that's torture. No, you can't do that.
And how would that work with the intermittentness of it, like you discussed on the other slide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's where tracking is going to be really important here. One event would mean I'm coming to you because I have to take care of the birth of my baby. That's an event. All right. That means you've accessed it once. If you say, oh, you know what, now I'm not feeling well, I'm going to take off, you can't do that. That's a different event. So you can only access this once a year. Intermittent leave is for one event. So I'm going on, I have an illness, I'm dealing with my illness over, a 12-week intermittent leave over the year. It's one event. So you have to look at it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's important to know, because like you said, if someone is going to get chemotherapy, then they're not going to be doing it all day for 5 days a week. It's
right.
once a month or twice a month for 6 months. Same with if you're watching out for a loved one, which obviously is really important for a lot of people, and happens as your parents get later in life, is that you might not realize when you need to take a day, 2 days, 3 days to help them in their home, to help them in the hospital or something like that. So that's where I think it's important to have the tracking, but having a team like BBSI that can put these kind of procedures in place to allow you to know how to track, rather than somebody started taking FAMLI and now how do we track it? Let's get ahead of this together.
Yeah. And like I say, I think a lot of this is all dependent on how the agency lays out these benefits and explains this stuff. If you look at what literature is out there, it's all very rudimentary at best. And so it's, I think we're going to hear a lot more in the fourth quarter. Next question. I think we've asked this a few times, right? Are multi-state employers expected to offer FAMLI? This is where it gets nebulous. Yes, their employees are. Now note, for multi-state employers, if they have less than 10 employees, if they have less, all employees nationwide could count toward the head count. So just like I said before, talk to your accountant to find out more about how that works. Then you have our 1099 workers. I realize it's repeating. Yes, they are. They can opt in and take FAMLI. How about bonuses and commissions? Do they count to calculate the benefit? Why, yes, they do. They count toward compensation. And can employers opt out of the family program? Yes, they can. They can have their own private plan, and the agency actually says that it's out there. So this is where, Lakeside is going to talk to you quite a bit about an option for you all where you can get out of this. It also means you get out of the taxes, paying the family taxes. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
and I think it's important for everyone to understand that this family program is through the state of Colorado. So as of right now, you're going to be required to enroll through the state. But what Audrey's touching on, and we'll discuss more on later, is that Lakeside has a solution through a private insurance company in which we can provide quotes to your business for most of the time a cheaper rate than you're going to get it through the state. Same coverage, cheaper price, cheaper rate, but it's going to be the same thing that you receive through the state. So
yeah, and to reiterate what you said, Jake, you do have to register with the state, no matter what, and then when you get the private plan, when you get the plan document, you submit it to the state. The state will say, yes, that's the same or better than family. You no longer have to pay taxes. And then you have to work through getting the tax refund if you paid it already through the state. So it's quite complicated, but it is possible to do. All right, let's go into some other aspects of family. Jake, I'm assuming you have no more questions, right?
no more questions for now, but
Okay.
we appreciate everyone that's been asking questions, and we'll keep moving along and open to more.
Yay, all right. Let's talk about some other more nuanced aspects of the law that you probably didn't even know about. One, that eligible employees have the right to take family leave for these covered situations at any point in their employment. So if I've earned $2,500 more and I've earned $2,500 more and I'm on a 90-day probationary period, I'm entitled to family leave. Okay, so there's no qualifying period like you have for benefits or vacation. If they earn $2,500, they're eligible. All right. The other thing is for you to hold the job open, the employee must have been with you a minimum of 6 months or 180 days. And what that means is, similar to FMLA, an employee leaves for leave, you can't fill that position with a permanent position, another employee, while they're gone, unless they're gone more than 12 or 16 weeks. So the question I have for all of you is, do you have a plan for what you're going to do? And I'll give you some ideas to think about now, because this is a big deal. This is probably a bigger deal to me than the family benefit, the potential for disruption to small businesses. So let's talk about what that means. All right. So employee gets the same position or equivalent upon returning. There's no penalties for taking a leave. And my health care, actually all my benefits are protected while I'm on leave. I have to figure out how to pay that. And the types of benefits that they call health care are all these benefits listed here. So you got to keep employees active while they're on FAMLI with all their benefits. And then you got to make sure that you have a plan for the employee benefits deductions prior to the employee going on family leave, which means that you can say, do you want to pay it when you return in one lump sum? Do you want to pay through deductions from your PTO? Do you want to top off your family benefit to cover your benefit premiums? Or do you want to pay us directly with a personal check, right? And if you do have them pay a lump sum, you come up with a repayment plan. Let's say if they owe a couple $1,000, you're not going to expect them to take it out of their first check. You can do multiple pay periods if you want to. But if they leave, the only means you have to collect that money is through other legal means, such as small claims court. And this is a risk that many companies have dealt with in FMLA, where employees, they take the leave and then they leave, they resign. You lose those benefits. So I encourage all of you to come up with a plan to figure out how to collect that money, either while they're on leave or the minute they return. So what about long and short-term disability? If you offer short and long-term disability, many brokers will tell you, probably get rid of your short-term disability plan starting next year. It may not be helpful. You can still offer it, but the benefits are offered are very different from short and long-term disability. What you have to do is you got to give written notice to your employees that you're going to keep your short-term disability plan. And if you don't know what to say, talk to your broker, because this is going to be very confusing for employees. It's, short-term disability and family leave are like apples and oranges. They're very different from one another. So with that in mind, they don't match their benefits. Family benefits is based on that calculator I was telling you about, where it's a variable percentage based on your earnings, where short-term disability and long-term is a percentage of pay, typically 50, 60%. Whoops, sorry about that, 50, 60%. And so it's different. And if you opt to keep the short-term disability in place, you will have to coordinate short-term disability with family, so that if somebody makes only 50% with family and they're not at the max, and they make 60% with short-term disability and they're not the max, the short-term disability provider has to fill that gap, and you have to give them that information, which is really a headache. So think about that if you have short-term disability, if you really need it starting next year. Some other state benefits that people ask about whether they're coordinated with family is, well, we'll answer that question. Employees can't collect from both family and the unemployment division. They also can't collect from family while on workers' compensation receiving temporary total or partial disability. All right, so those are things they can't do. So I've just laid out the law for you. Jake, do you have any other questions in the queue?
No, we're still going along well, so.
It's stunned silence, that's what it is. Okay.
They're learning and taking.
I get it. It took me a while to figure this all out. So I'm going down to brass tacks, okay? I'm telling you how this works for your company. You got the concept of the law and what's required and things to consider. Now what I want to talk to you about is some tactical considerations, some things you got to get ready for. And I'm going to show you a slide that's a tad bit busy, but I think this is something, if you can get the presentation, look at this one closely, because this is a plan to prepare you for family. First of all, if you see here, the first step the law requires you to do is to proactively inform your employee that family exists and starts on January 1st, which means you have a legal poster. You'll get some updated legal posters in the beginning of the year. There's also one in the website. You already have a paycheck stuffer that should have gone out in November of last year. So if you don't have a copy of that, I can provide one to you through Jake, or you can look it up on the website. And as we talked about before, you should have a policy in your handbook very briefly explaining family. And you should, my advice to you is to do it in the fourth quarter, roll out your handbook with the update in Q4. You don't have to emphasize family. I would just say, here's an update to our handbook, and oh, by the way, here's some changes and additions. Have them sign the handbook acknowledgement form, put it in the file, you're good to go. Then you have it done. The second thing is you got to train a supervisor on how to manage employees who come forward as family, because they're your greatest risk if they react in the incorrect way. There's some legal risk to this. All right, so they can't say, no, you can't. They can't say that. They have to say, go to the agency, file your claim there. They can't treat the employee differently or negatively because they risk retaliation, which is a legal issue. So they can't get mad at them. They can't tell them this is the horrible thing that they're doing to the company. All those things are retaliation, and I will tell you more about retaliation in a little bit, which means training the supervisors is absolutely critical so they know what to say when someone says, I want to use my family leave. Because what could happen if they're not trained is they get mad, because now they have a problem they got to deal with, and they take it out on the employee. So that's not okay. You got to get them ready for this. The third thing is to share the process with your employees, to explain to them what to expect. So you can very rudimentarily say in your handbook update discussion, hey, there's a family process. If you decide you're going to access family, come to the contact that you have designated, and they will explain further what you need to do. So, and make sure the supervisor's also aware of that process so they know what to say and do. You should create that process. So tell payroll what they're going to need to do. If the employee wants to supplement family with PTO and vacation, if there's going to be a top off to cover benefits premiums, all those things have to be thought through so that when it happens, everybody knows what to do and you know how to explain it to employees. And finally, you've got to have a plan on recouping benefit deductions, because if you don't, you may end up having an employee leave and then you have to write off that cost. All right, so you just want to have plans. It's all planning out a thoroughly robust new process for yourself to make sure you minimize, not eliminate, but minimize disruption to the business. So what is the process to formalize? Well, this is a nice little sample form. that you can use. I asked the agency if they had one. They said, of course not. And they also said, you should probably make the employee go through FMLA certification, and then we'll have a certification. And that means that the doctor and the employee have to fill out 2 forms. And I don't know if you've ever worked with a doctor who fills out FMLA paperwork, but it's like chasing a cat, running away. They will not fill those out. It's really hard. So 1 form should be enough. So there's another form that's coming. It's a certification form the agency will provide us later in the year. So, but for now, this gives you all the basics that you need to know. When it's going to start. Will it be intermittent? Do they want to use PTO? Talk to them about the benefits. And this is a nice formal way for them to explain to you what they need while they're on FAMLI. All right, so it's as simple as possible. So the next question is, how in the heck am I going to manage the work while the employee is gone? I mean, this is the big question, all right? Well, you can't replace the position for 12 to 16 weeks. I mean, you could, but then you have to bring them back, the employee, to the same or similar job. There are options, though. You can hire a temporary employee while they're gone. And if you have an agency now that you're working with, you should check in with them to see what they plan to do. The second option, if you don't have that kind of money laying around, is to reallocate the work to others. So this is a supervisor question, how would you do that? You could also outsource the work to a company that does the work for you, or you can delay projects or work while the employee is out. So now is the time to think this through, and ask supervisors what options they think they have to make that happen. And then you've got to keep the employees' benefits that they're enrolled in active for 12 to 16 weeks. I am also going to add a little complication to this. If you have open enrollment while the employee is out, you've got to notify them and make sure they enroll much like they were if they were active employee, so that their benefits continue past open enrollment. All right? And that's not an issue right now. Typically, most open enrollments happen in November, December for January 1st, but come next year, it's going to add a wrinkle to processing benefits. Now, here's another thing you shouldn't do. Don't ask the employee to work while they're out. FMLA frowns on that. And employees can't double dip. In other words, they can't work for you and get family benefits. That's an issue to the agency. Now, they haven't figured out yet how they're going to penalize companies for doing that, but you want to avoid that. It's very risky for you to say, well, you're getting paid by family. I'll just make you do the work, but I'm not going to pay you. Now that's a FLSA, a Fair Labor Standards Act issue, where you're not paying people for time worked, which is a huge legal risk for you. And that agency is not nice in the least. They will go after you and collect back pay. If you want to know, you can contact the agency if the employee wants to work on family benefits, and then have some coordination with them about it, and talk to them about this so that they can, if they do work part-time, at least the benefits drop to offset the pay they're receiving. So it's something to be really careful with if you want to do that. I would say the simplest thing to do is don't let the employee work while they're on family leave. All right. And then and this is all goodwill, where you ask the employee to talk to you when they're getting close. You can actually check in with them while they're out on family leave to see how they're doing. I mean, this is very helpful and beneficial. They'll tell you how things are. Many employers never call employees while they're out. It would be nice if you did that, because then you can find out a lot of information. Not only can you treat this person like a human being that you really care about, but also you can get some information on when are they coming back? What's going on? What do they plan to do? I mean, all these things are really important for you to plan ahead. So that's the brass tacks. Any questions so far, Jake?
We do have a question, and it lines up pretty well with that third bullet point that you stated. So I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask the question and we can kind of discuss it and paint a better picture. So the question is, can an employee participate in a privately funded family plan through their employers and also individually participate in family with the state if the employer opts out of the state's plan, essentially double dipping on payment? It's like they knew you were going to put double dip in your slide.
I love that question, because I asked the state that same question last week, and guess what the answer was? We don't know. So I said, so you don't know yet how you're going to deal with potential fraud or double dipping. Then we don't call it double dipping. We call it, I don't know what we call it. And I said, will you have an answer in September? And they said, yep. So the answer is we don't know, and won't know until the agency figures this out. But knowing agencies, I would tell you that they're pretty ugly about it. If you think about the unemployment division, when they catch employees double dipping there, they make employees repay their benefits. you know, and they're not nice about it. They'll send them a letter saying you owe us $2,000 and pay up. So I wouldn't take that risk again. But again, this is a new agency. We all have to navigate through a very amorphous process right now. And I think we'll learn more later in the year, and then we'll learn even more in 2024. We just don't know right now. That's a great question. Okay, so what does retaliation look like in the context of family leave? If I ask for family leave, you give me a warning, some kind of warning about poor performance. And by the way, this happens in workers' compensation where you might have a poor performing employee and they file a workers' comp claim. You can't necessarily go, well, you're a poor employee, so I'm going to give you a written warning. I'm going to fire you for poor performance, even though I didn't tell you before it happened. So you just have to be very cognizant that you don't want to give, you got to be careful with giving people warnings after they ask for family leave. Now, they may have very legitimate performance issues that you have to address. My advice there is do it earlier. Do it early when you see it at the very beginning. It could be verbal warning, whatever it is, you document the performance issues as soon as you see them to prevent this kind of thing from happening. Retaliation also is reducing pay or hours or denying the employee additional work because they filed a family leave. And this is also deciding that not to hire someone if they said, yeah, my last job I had to use family leave. Well, guess what? If you don't hire, that could be potentially retaliation. And by the way, retaliation is where they go to the agency and they file a complaint and say, that employer retaliated against me, here's what happened. And guess where the burden of proof is on? It's on the employer to prove that they didn't do that. Refusing to reinstate someone who wants to come back to work. You can't say, nope, I don't want you back. I didn't like you as an employee. I don't want you back. That's retaliation. And here's another one, and this is another training issue that you have to get ready for your supervisors. You can't share confidential private health information publicly. Now, the employee can do it, no big deal, but you can't say things, well, you know, she took family leave because her significant other was abusing her, you know, and that will spread like wildfire as gossip. You cannot do that. Or it might be, oh, she had a complication in her surgery and she's out on family leave and, oh, this ugliness is going on, or maybe she had a mental health breakdown. Those are all HIPAA issues. HIPAA is where you have to manage carefully private health information. So my advice to you is don't let people talk about people's conditions or the situation on family if possible. If they decide to divulge it, no biggie, but you shouldn't be doing it. Also, publicly saying don't take family leave. That is considered retaliatory behavior on the part of the employer. And so tell them, nope, I don't think you should do it. I think that's a bad idea. That is not you as a business. It's not your right to do that. They have to go through the agency to make that determination. So if an employee comes in and says, should I? You say, talk to the agency. They'll let you know. Don't get in the middle of it. The other thing is interfering with the request. An interference for a request would be, well, you know what? I'm not going to sign that. I'm going to fill out that form. I'm not going to help you get this process going. I'm not going to verify that you're an employee when they ask me for information. I'm just going to slow it all down. That's retaliation. So you don't want to do that either. And then, of course, giving false or misleading information. You will get a request for information from the agency. You can't give them bad information because that's what they base the family benefits on. So always be honest with the information, but you'll find that some people who don't know better will give bad information with the intent for revenge of the employee, and that is retaliation. And then failing to provide the notice, the posters, putting the posters up, putting the policy in your handbook, making people aware of family. You can't make it a deep, dark secret in your company. It's got to be out there for employees to know that it's there. And finally, threatening an employee's immigration status is considered retaliatory if they want to take family leave as well.
So we have a good question off of this, Audrey, and I'm going to assume that we're probably going to know more in September and October, but what are some of these penalties looking like for any of these violations right now?
You don't know yet. I can tell you that other agencies do things like $100 a day penalty up to several $1,000s. You know, other agencies ask for back pay and penalties. Every agency is different. This one doesn't have a prescribed penalty clause in it yet. Like I said, I suspect we'll have much more information about penalties later in the year. But typically, it's a lot of money. Net. It's a lot of money that you have to pay out in fines. So, all right. So,
one more quick one too, because this does involve the HIPAA, like you said. Mm-hmm. what do you have to say to does your employee have to tell you why they are taking family? Or do they just report that to the agency and then the agency notifies you that Jake is taking family?
Good question. I haven't thought of that. My first reaction, if I were the agency, is no. But practically, I think that people, and when you think of FMLA, you get a doctor's certification that you collect, and the agency did say that the employer should collect that doctor's certification, which would mean that you would know all the information about why that person is taking leave. So at this point, I don't know. I think that's something to ask the agency when they have their benefits people up and running. All right, if I've overwhelmed you with information, there's a lot of information out there on the website. And in fact, I will show you where you can find, there's actually some links right here. The toolkit is a really beneficial item that explains all of this in detail as of today, and the handbook as well. The handbook will give you some policy suggestions. And then there's a paycheck stuffer that was rolled out in November. If you haven't rolled out to your employees, that explains why they're getting that tax paid. In addition to that, I have a website here that's from the FAMLI website. I like this one. This is the one where I spent the most time learning about what's out there with the agency. And I would encourage you to explore this one as well, because it gives you some real practical guidance on. It's the closest thing we have to great information about family. Still not 100% yet, but it certainly is better than knowing nothing. And included in here, if you don't have your family notice poster, it's right there. You might want to put that up on your bulletin board if you don't have it. And of course, it shows a paycheck stuffer that was rolled out last year explaining the tax. So I encourage you to take a look at this. It's really awesome, and get to know it more. But that's where I'm going to go when I learn more about family. So Jake, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so it's kind of a question as well as a statement, is that family seems like it's potentially going to be somewhat of a nightmare for employers. And the answer to that is yes, if you don't become proactive, talking to us, talking to BBSI, understanding and reading through the guidelines. Obviously, a lot of information is going to be rolled out within the next 8 to 10 days for us to better understand this. But it's just having those conversations, being upfront, being proactive about these things, rather than letting it kind of catch up to you and letting an unforeseen issue happen. But then the question off of this is, what will happen if the agency denies the application for family benefits? Do you still have to take the employee back?
Yes, you do.
Okay, and no, and the other statement about it is saying that it's potentially for fraud, which again, we agree could potentially happen as well. Double dipping, like what was asked previously. So
Yeah.
again, it's putting procedures in place, having it within the employee handbook, and then having your employee also sign that employee handbook stating that they know and understand what they signed, so that if one of these unforeseen issues were to happen, then there is some defense at least backing you, and you have documentation. And I think that's something that's really important, and something that Audrey touched on so many times throughout this webinar, is that documentation is going to be so crucial as we head to finish out this year and into the next year regarding this.
Yeah, and I would tell you, to reiterate that, many enforcing agencies are asking for signed copies of handbook acknowledgments nowadays, because employees will go, I didn't know anything. I didn't know that was a policy. And so they're asking employers to provide proof that the employee was given the policy. So handbooks are now becoming more and more important, and particularly in unemployment claims, where they're saying, show me where the policy was before. And if an employee says, I didn't know, you show that they signed the document. It's your way of saying, no, they had access to the policy and opted not to read it. So I realize handbooks are a bother, but given all the complexities of all the laws out there, the call to secure savings, the equal pay for equal work, all these little laws out there that are floating around, it's just better to have them in a handbook and have acknowledgement for employees that they receive that information. So, and now you have the family, they're demanding that you notify employees that it's coming.
No, and one thing that I want to paint the picture for, based on all the questions about the agency, about the state level. So this is new for Colorado, and this is a new agency, as Audrey has discussed. But FAMLI is not new around the US. It's very popular on the East Coast. The insurance company that we're able to provide quotes through has been dealing with FAMLI for 10 plus years in states like Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York. We're just catching up to the rest of the country and putting laws like this in place. So That's why getting a quote separately from the state will not just benefit you on price, but also on response time, on claims handling for people that have dealt with this in other states before, and the experience rather than dealing with a new state agency that has never done this before. So I know we're kind of running up on time. This is another good question because it does kind of touch on that HIPAA, and then we'll wrap it up. And obviously we'll be sharing the webinar later. So one final question for you, Audrey. Are employers allowed to ask for copies of the application and any sort of medical certification once it's been submitted?
The agency said they want you to do that. I don't totally buy it because it's coming across as maybe, but yeah, they have said that it's okay for you to ask for that application. I would wait though until we hear from the agency benefit folks. They're going to have all this information laid out to be sure. And I personally will verify that myself because they said yes, but sort of, and that just bothers me.
No, and I agree. And so what we've done is we've saved all the questions that were asked today. We're going to put them on a document. Once we have more answers come September, October, we'll be posting another published article. I'm not sure if you saw already. Audrey posted a very nice blog that we shared on our website, shared on Lakeside's LinkedIn. You can view it now. What I'll do after the webinar, it'll probably get sent out on Thursday, is a recording of the webinar that you can share with anyone that's an employee, employers, anyone within your network that you'd like to share. It'll be on our website. We'll put it on our LinkedIn, and then I'll probably also do a quick survey, probably 4 questions, because we really appreciated obviously all the conversations and questions throughout. It makes it a lot more entertaining and active for everyone that's involved, as well as Audrey and I, so we can kind of converse with everyone throughout the webinar. So we really do appreciate that. And based on kind of the amount of people that joined today and more information that's going to be coming out, we'll probably be doing some sort of a quick webinar, maybe later in November, to kind of really touch on some of these things to get things in place. And we'll be sending out another email because there are some dates that are coming up, October 31st being one of them, in which you'll need to submit an application to get a quote from an external agency, which we'll be able to provide you as well.
Yeah, and I encourage you to look at that option, the private plans, because it might make your life easier given the complexities of the state. But yeah, we're all learning, and it's important for you to know is you want to learn, listen to this stuff over and over again if you have to, so that you become an expert by December 31st.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Audrey. We appreciate you. You're an absolute pro. I know this isn't easy, and all the different alphabet soups are being thrown around, but we're all learning together. So we're gonna get through this. And again, appreciate everyone's time, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.
For joining today. For those that don't know me, my name is